once we have the pencil sketch where we want it to be, we are going to move on to the inking. There's a couple different ways that you can do this. I have here a Micron pen and a Prismacolor pen. There's a bunch of different companies. These are two of the more popular ones. When we are making a tattoo design specifically, it's important to think about the width, your line width. Now what that means literally just means how wide the tip of your pen is. A wider tip will leave obviously a wider line on the paper, and a narrow tip will leave a narrower line. You want to start out with a wider pen. So this one, I'm going to use the 08. And what this does is this mimics the tattoo process, because what your tattoo artist will do with most designs that kind of are more into the traditional or the neo-traditional is they'll outline everything first with a wider line. And what this does is this helps the ink stay within the bounds of that outline. So when they go into color and to shade, it actually creates somewhat of a barrier. And so when you're drawing, you can actually mimic the process or the order in which the tattoo artist would end up doing these things. So we're gonna start with a wider line. And for this first step, we're going to just outline the shapes. And with this one, this is obviously with the pen, so you want to be slow and take your time for this. You don't want to just rush through it. And you want to create the outlines for the design that we can then go in and add smaller details to after the fact, okay? So we will begin right over the top of the existing pencil sketch. Some people prefer to take this and you can scan it or photocopy it. Photocopying works well because it gives you a very light outline of the design that you want to do, but the downside of that is that you can't erase those lines. They're printed onto the paper. So the element of the pencil sketch that I like is that after you go in and draw with your pen, you can go over the pen and you can erase the pencil marks, and it will leave the pen marks only, and it's a bit cleaner. I'm just going to start outlining the shapes, and then we will go from there. And for this, you may not want to follow the pencil marks exactly, because there's obviously, you'll see in these areas here, there's overlapping pencil marks. They're not always on the same line. So with this one, you're trying to go for something that's a little bit more smooth, even if it means not necessarily following the pencil marks exactly. So we're just going to go and we're going to kind of trace in these lines, going right over the top of the pencil. This is where you'd cut to like techno music in the background and like speed up the camera so it looks like I'm really cool and drawing super fast. Or maybe an 80s music montage. The inking is definitely probably the most tedious part of the design. You're gonna definitely just kind of be tracing things more or less. It's not going to be maybe as exciting, but you'll start to see things taking shape. You should focus more on the details than you did on the previous designs. I'm still just sort of outlining things. So what I would do is probably focus on drawing the outlines first, and then once I've drawn the outlines, I can move on to the other elements. But there is something kind of nice and meditative about this. You want to be very conscious of your line relationships. If you have something where these lines, for example, these lines are obviously getting very close together, you wouldn't want to put any of these thick lines much closer than this. If there's a lot of overlapping lines or a lot of areas where the lines are really close together, oftentimes you'll see in a tattoo the lines will actually start to kind of blur together. Oftentimes your tattoo artist will be able to remedy this when they go in and trace this and kind of maybe update it for your skin, but it's something to be conscious about nonetheless, because it will help, just come up with a stronger design overall. Okay, so we talked about the boards. I want to make the boards look like they're sort of tacked on to the outside of the heart, but maybe also somehow merging into the heart. So for some of these, I'm not going to necessarily draw the entire board. This one right here, I'm going to draw a line that sort of disappears a bit to make it look like this might actually just be kind of part of the heart. I'm not going to draw a lot of detail yet, but you can at least start to see things taking shape. Looking at old barns, looking at old structures or examples of this sort of visual aesthetic can help you. So like if you're looking at this board here, you're going to see it's at an angle, which means you're going to see the end of the board. So you want to draw that in. One thing that I've kind of decided since I've drawn the pencil sketch is that I want this to be not quite as evenly spaced. So I'm going to put things a little bit more kind of at an angle. So I'm actually going to ignore the pencil lines here. And I'm going to kind of draw this over the edge and have it kind of rough and overlapping. And this one is going to kind of be broken a little bit. And like I was talking before, you don't have to be the best artist in the world to compile elements and to sort of give yourself an idea of what you're looking for. This is not a super detailed drawing, but even this would be enough to take into a shop and be like, this is an idea that I have, I want it to look similar to this, and then the artist would then kind of take this drawing. The more detail that you put in is okay, but sometimes something that's simple and straightforward might be the best to get across an idea. Okay, so we have the general outlines right now for the design. Before I get into the details, I'm going to want to take the pencil marks away, because the pencil marks right now start to get a little bit confusing. And so what you'll see is that there's actually a clearer picture when you erase the pencil marks. So you want to make sure, first of all, that your ink is dry, because I've had several designs that I've messed up and had to redraw because I haven't really let the ink settle into the paper, and I go in and I erase it, and normally it's fine, but if it's a little bit damp, it will smudge the ink and it will leave an ugly sort of like black mark on this. So I'm going to do the outside first. You can use a normal eraser, but I'm using one of these kneaded erasers, the rubber kneaded things that you can kind of like change the shape of. This actually helps because it doesn't leave any of those annoying little bits of rubber after you've erased. So the top part I drew first, so I'm going to assume that that's probably more dry, so I'm going to go up and very lightly go over the design, and you can see the difference between these two. There's more pencil marks here, but you can get most of the pencil marks away just by gently kind of running the eraser over the paper. And what this does is this gives you a nice clean ink outline to work from.